mysterious prayer of Saint Benedict revealed how faith can expulse evil from your home. Few knew what truly happened that night in the small, flickering light of the candle-lit chapel. The air was thick with unease, shadows danced, and a chill crept into every heart. A whispered prayer was on the lips of a desperate few, but the spectral presence looming at the back was something far more sinister. Saint Benedict's prayer, revered for centuries, held a power that seemed almost too great to fathom. It was said that when whispered in times of grave danger, it could repel malevolent forces from homes and hearts alike. The chapel stood in a forgotten village, nestled between dark woods where creatures of the night seemed to come alive. This was a place where people would gather, not only for solace, but for the hope of warding off the unknown. The night was no ordinary evening. A violent storm raged outside, howling winds rattling the doors and rain striking like fists against the windows. Inside, the faithful congregants clutched rosaries tightly, eyes darting nervously toward the sanctuary, as if expecting something to emerge. There were stories of shadows that lingered too long, of whispers that sent chills down spines. And yet, in this space of desperation, Saint Benedict's words offered a flicker of hope, a glimmer of light amidst the suffocating darkness. But as the prayer echoed softly through the chapel, it was met with an unsettling silence. A pervasive tension filled the air, an invisible pressure pushing in from all sides. What would happen if it failed? What if the force they feared could not be cast out by mere words? Muffled gasps broke the stillness as an inexplicable shiver ran through the gathered crowd. The altar candles flickered violently. Was there a breach in the spiritual realm? Were they truly safe? Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the room fell silent. A figure, cloaked in shadows, seemed to swirl in the doorway, taunting, teasing, almost inviting dread. A low growl emanated from the depths, as a vulnerable gasp escaped from the lips of a trembling woman in the front row. Fear washed over the others, each heartbeat loud enough to echo in their ears. Would the prayer hold? Or would the darkness consume them? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. In the thick of silence, where even the wind outside seemed to pause in anticipation, the figure in the doorway became more defined. It was cloaked, but its presence was undeniable. The air shimmered with an otherworldly energy, as if the very fabric of reality was shifting. The whispers of ancient lore danced in the minds of the gathered, tales of spirits and guardians, of faith clashing with malice. One elder, well-versed in scripture, felt compelled to step forward. Clutching a tattered Bible, his voice trembled but rang clear, calling upon the power of Saint Benedict's prayer with fervor. O glorious Saint Benedict, intercede for us. Protect us from this evil that seeks to overcome our hope. There was passion in his plea, such a conviction that, perhaps, the words themselves were a shield against the night's horrors. Yet, as the congregation echoed his call, each repetition seemed to fall heavier, like stones cast into the unfathomable depths of despair. The shadows stirred, unfurling slightly, revealing a contorted, almost human-like form that seemed both familiar and utterly foreign. The flickering candlelight cast a peculiar glow upon the figure, illuminating darkened eyes filled with ancient sorrow and malice. It was a gaze that instinctively resonated with a shared history of humanity, fear of the unknown, pain from loss, the collective dread of encounters with darkness. In that moment, it became apparent to some, this entity was not merely a stranger, but a reflection of insecurities that dwelt within the hearts of all present. As they confronted the haunting reality, A soft voice broke through the cacophony of fear. It was a child from the back, clutching a worn stuffed animal, her innocence untouched by the suffocating tension. "Why are you afraid?" she asked, her eyes wide and unyielding. "Can't you see that you are not alone?" Her words hung delicately in the air, a reminder of the belief that faith could indeed illuminate the darkest path. In the face of impending dread, hope sparked anew in the hearts of those gathered. The assembled murmured amidst the growing wind, exchanging glances, grappling with the child's simple yet profound question. Could faith truly conquer this embodiment of their fears? As the storm raged outside, the atmosphere within the chapel shifted. Saint Benedict's prayer, inflected with newfound energy, was rising, igniting an unexpected warmth among the faithful. Perhaps the power rested not only in the phrase, but within the bonds of love and unity woven between them in this sacred space. But as the figure's form flickered ominously, a haunting chuckle echoed, rippling through the chapel. A challenge lingered in the air, unspoken. How far were they willing to walk into faith's embrace? What would they have to face to reclaim their peace? They suddenly realized the battle had only begun, and uncertainty shrouded their next step. Would their collective faith prove potent enough to cast out what had come to haunt them? The flickering candlelight danced almost mockingly, leaving behind an unresolved echo, a lingering question resting heavily on their hearts. Would they rise together against the shadow, or be consumed by it? As the wind howled outside, sweeping relentlessly around the chapel's stones, a sense of electric anticipation crackled through the atmosphere. The child's question lingered, a buoy in the tumultuous sea of doubt that had engulfed the gathered faithful. Eyes once clouded with trepidation now shone with a flicker of contemplation, drawing strength from one another in that moment of shared vulnerability. The elder with the tattered Bible remained steadfast, inspired by the child's innocence. He closed his eyes momentarily, recalling the stories of the ancient tales where prophets faced their fears with unwavering faith, where a whisper of hope could part the veil of darkness. "Gather close," he intoned, beckoning those around him. "Let us consider what binds us and what shields us." Slowly, the congregation formed a circle, hands clasping together, not merely as a barrier against the shadow, but as a radiant circuitry of faith, inviting a divine presence into the space between them. The elder began to recite a lesser-known prayer from the Scriptures, one shrouded in mystery and steeped in the essence of protection. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." As the words flowed, luminous threads of energy seemed to weave between their outstretched hands, mingling with the flickering light of the candles around them. The shadow chortled in response, a garbled sound that echoed with a pained mockery. It wrapped itself more tightly, morphing into a smoky swirl that danced along the edges of their united circle, testing their resolve. Then, with a sudden urgency, the child raised her arms. "We can share our fears. We can tell them to God." Her voice, unyielding and buoyant, provided a spark of courage to the adult minds that often felt burdened by the weight of their own darkness. One by one, the worshippers began to share their struggles and longings for peace, the unresolved grief, the persistent shadows from their pasts. With each revelation, the intensity of the figure's presence seemed to wane, as if the light they shared kept at bay the encroaching darkness. The elder continued, breathing deeply as he encouraged them to surrender their burden. "I invite you to trust in the aspect of your faith that runs deeper than fear. For this night is not solely about resisting. It is about understanding the grace of our shared humanity." His voice steadied, resonating like a deep bell throughout the sacred space. Yet, just as the last word echoed into stillness, a crack of thunder roared through the heavens, rattling the heavy stained glass. In that moment, the shadows surged, morphing into a shape even more grotesque than before, revealing a face wrought with every fear, every sorrow the worshippers had confessed. "What an uplifting little gathering," it mocked, sneering at their fragile unity. You think you can drive me out with mere words? You are nothing without your fears." The room chilled, the breath of dread washing over them, threatening to extinguish their hard-won flame of hope. The light from the flickering candles began to flicker more rapidly, reflecting the turmoil within the hearts of those gathered. But in the fabric of their union, a deeper truth began to weave itself into the room, a profound realization that their fears were not separate from the essence of faith. To face one's fears was to step deeper into the embrace of hope. And so, their resolve renewed, they called upon the promise of their togetherness. As they chanted the dear prayer of Saint Benedict once more, they sought not just to expel the darkness, but to transform it, to wrestle with it, to glean the light hidden within their shadows. Would their amalgam of faith and vulnerability be strong enough to confront this insidious being? As the echoes of their prayers intertwined with the storm outside, an unsettling question arose. In the depths of our shadows, can we truly extract light, or do we merely deepen the veil of fear? With the storm continuing to rage outside, the air inside the chapel became charged with an unearthly anticipation as the congregation chanted in a rising crescendo. The words of the prayer mixed with their earnest desires, weaving a tapestry of hope that harmonized with the lightning flashes illuminating their sanctuary. The shadow hesitated, momentarily confused by the power of their united voices, testing the limits of its own malice. "Strengthen us, O Lord," cried the elder, his voice firm and unyielding, "for we are but frail of heart, yet buoyed by love's embrace. Grant us the clarity to see the truth even in turmoil." As his words punctuated the air, a light flickered in the corner of the chapel, a golden hue shining forth unexpectedly, casting long shapes upon the walls. The child, seemingly unaffected by the shadow's mockery, turned her gaze toward the source of the glow. "What is that light?" she murmured, a mix of awe and curiosity lacing her voice. The others followed her gaze, their fears overshadowed by a burgeoning intrigue. The low haze of darkness was still thick, but the appearance of the light suggested that hope was not lost. Amidst the chanting, a soft ripple spread through the congregation, as if an unseen hand stirred their spirits, warming their hearts. One by one, faces softened. Even the eldest, worried and weary, felt the tender touch of peace wash over him. The elder, now sensing the upliftment, spoke with purpose. "In the Scriptures, there exists a deeper mystery, one not confined to mere words, but embodied by action. Share stories of faith that have carried you through shadows before, for it is in these truths that we may find unshakable courage." Encouraged by his request, a woman stepped forward, her voice initially trembling but gaining strength as she spoke. "Once, I faced a time when despair threatened to consume me like this moment. I clung to a verse that promised light in darkness. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That promise became my anchor." One by one, the gathered shared their personal encounters with fear and despair, how they had wrestled with shadows and emerged with newfound strength. Each testimony added another thread to the tapestry of light, growing between them a radiant energy that began to pulsate outward, confronting the lurking shadow in anger. Yet, just as they began to find a rhythm in their declarations, the shadow towered, visibly irritated. "How sweet it is to hear your tales," it sneered, "but they hold no power against me. Your light is naught but a flicker in the vastness of despair." The figure swirled faster, a vast battlefield of the past dancing in fury around them, reminders of losses, regrets, and simmering anxieties. The elders stood firm against the tumult, raising the tattered Bible high. No deception can extinguish the truth embedded within each heart. Challenge the very core of your being, grieve, yes, but rise again. For from ashes, the spirit is reborn, and in struggle, faith is forged. His words rang through the chapel like a bell of determination, prompting an echo of resilient courage to surge within the attendees. As they focused on the light and their collective strength, the shadow shrank back momentarily, flickering like a candle caught in a gust of wind. Yet it was still nearby, looming threateningly, like a predator lurking in the dark. Each story shared appeared like a sword crafted from faith, but still, doubt hovered near. In the echoing silence that followed, a question seemed to linger in the air. What happens when we face our fears bravely yet still find shadows at our heels? Can an unwavering light ever truly banish the dark, or does the struggle continue through every cycle of faith and doubt? The congregation found themselves caught in a thickening web of anticipation, their breath mingling with the golden hue that flickered from the corner of the chapel. Unseen forces danced on the precipice of the spirit world, blurring the lines between what was visible and what remained hidden. The elder, emboldened by their shared stories, sensed a shifting within the atmosphere, a tension that both lured them forward and cautioned them against the unknown. "Let us not forget," he said, drawing the attention back to the challenge at hand, "the heart of our faith is not merely found in words and hymns, but in how we embody those truths in moments of despair. The struggle against the shadow mirrors the struggle of all humanity, a reminder of our longing for the divine." The mention of the divine, the light resonated, illuminating the scars borne by the faithful. The child, emboldened by the elder's call, stepped closer to the center, her small frame seemingly untouched by the fear that dominated the darkened corners of the chapel. "What if our stories, what if they were a bridge?" she proposed quietly, her voice holding a singular clarity amidst the chaos. "Could they connect us to the light we seek? Could each tale transform the flicker of hope into a blazing fire?" Her question settled upon the congregation like a gentle breeze, as if urging them to consider the depth of their purpose. The elder nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed, the stories of our lives become the embers that spark renewal. If fire represents purification and rebirth, perhaps through our authenticity, we too can incite a refiner's blaze." As the congregation contemplated this idea, the shadow trembled, disliking the resonance of their spirit. It swirled with ferocity, its form contorting in anger. "Your tales are but remnants of your weakness. You cannot harness light without first succumbing to despair. Your memories will betray you, and in your darkest hour, you shall know abandonment." Yet, there was a power rising in the hearts of the people, each testimony acting as a fragile but steadfast kindling. A man of great wisdom rose, his voice shaking the air. "I remember wandering in a valley shadowed by my own failures. I sought solace, dominating the light with my despair. But it was in vulnerability that I found companions to walk with me, voices that echoed hope where there seemed none. Together, we sang into the darkness until the fear began to loosen its grip. Perhaps the shadow knows our secrets, but not our unity." The atmosphere shifted. With each tale of anguish turned into courage, the light brightened, creating a warm cocoon around them. They began to join their voices, weaving snippets of shared experiences into a harmonious crescendo that reached into the very essence of existence. The shadow recoiled, sensing its stronghold weakening. As the congregation sang, the elder reached out toward the flickering light, feeling an inexplicable pull. Saint Benedict once taught us, he reminded them, that we are not alone in our struggles. The power of prayer, pure in heart and spirited in unity, can usher forth aid from heaven itself. Let us invoke a prayer of liberation. In that moment, a ripple of anticipation surged through the gathered souls. They lifted their voices together, a choir of faith thrusting upward into the storm that raged outside. Each word whispered forth contained rich intention, inviting divine intervention to break the heavy veil of darkness. Then an unexpected silence enveloped them, as if the very heavens paused to listen. The shadow lurked and twisted, clinging desperately to its fading presence. Frustration echoed in its sneer. "You think to call upon something greater? Do you not know the lies that blanket your hearts? Your faith is but a flicker against my might." Yet, the congregation felt their unity fortify. The light surged brighter, parting the haze. Amidst this unfolding drama lingered an unshakable question at the heart of their gathering. In invoking powers beyond their understanding, could they be protected from the very darkness that sought to consume them? Or would the struggle ripple further into their Levisa continuous cycle of grace interwoven with shadows? As the silence stretched like a thin veil over the chapel, the flickering light pulsed with an urgent rhythm. The congregation stood shoulder to shoulder, hearts racing as a thread of anticipation stitched them together, under the burden of both fear and hope. The elder's voice rose, fragile yet fierce, urging them forward. Let your faith breathe life into our prayer. Let us claim the promise of liberation. As their voices wove together, the air shimmered with unspoken prayers, the sincerity palpable. The child, emboldened by the tangible warmth of unity, took a step forward, her eyes wide with wonder. What if our memories, she pondered aloud, are not just weights that bind us, but keys that unlock the fullness of our stories? Can we invite the past to speak life into our present? In that moment, several among them recalled tales of individual resilience, echoing around the chapel like a sacred murmuration. A woman with tears tracing patterns down her cheeks spoke of a time she thought love had abandoned her, yet through faith was restored by the unlikeliest of friendships. A man followed suit, remembering how he had wandered far from the fold, only to find his way back through the steady light of shared compassion. Each story brought forth regret, but woven together, unveiled redemption. The shadows that had once encircled the space flickered uneasily, fearful of the power of collective vulnerability. You think your honesty will shield you? The shadow hissed, its voice dripping with disdain. But I know the truth hidden in your hearts. Each tear, each fear, I will twist against you. Your unity cannot hold against the weight of your despair. But the congregation, undeterred, continued to lift their prayers. The air thickened with sacred intent, and reverent whispers unfurled like wings. With our prayers, we echo the cries of those who have lost their way, the elder declared passionately, and turn our voices to summon divine light that banishes this darkness. Then, a sudden wind swept through the chapel, swirling with the energy of their resolve. The flickering light rose to a fierce glow, illuminating the hollowed corners that had for so long remained shrouded in fear. The congregation felt invigorated, as if a new current flowed through them, a surge of faith intertwined with the roots of their memories. Yet, just as they began to feel empowered, the shadow grew bolder, a swirling mass of tempests and whispers. You still possess the chains of your past. Let me show you the darkness that runs deep within your hearts. You will never rid yourselves of me. A sense of unease crept among the faithful, each of them distinct yet together, as if echoing across the generations. They could not escape their histories. They were imprinted in the very fabric of who they were. How could they rid themselves of the shadows when those shadows were woven into their stories? In that pause, the child raised her small hand, a spark born of courage illuminating her expression. What if we embraced our shadows instead? She suggested quietly, her voice cutting through the tension like a guiding light. What if in revealing our pain, we found healing and communion? The divine does not shun the broken. Perhaps we are meant to bring light into the darkest places of our lives. The elder's heart lifted at her words, but the shadows sought to exploit their hesitation. You see? Even in your strength you waver. Embrace your pain, yes, but know that it will consume you if you do not cling to your light. As the congregation listened, it became clear that their path was winding and uncertain toward both liberation and acceptance. Was clinging to their light the only way to combat the power of despair? Or could truth entwined with their vulnerability reveal a deeper understanding of strength, challenging the shadows with authenticity? Their voices rose yet again, forging a sacred tapestry of hope and humility. In intertwining their fears with faith, they began to answer the call of the mysteries surrounding them. But the question lingered, in embracing the shadows within. Could they ultimately transcend their pasts without losing their courage? Or would the precarious balance of light and dark hold them captive forever? The commotion around the chapel intensified, a divine tension threaded with uncertainty, as the congregation wrestled with the weight of the shadows that sought to undermine their resolve. The glitter of flickering light cast peculiar shapes upon the walls, intermingling with the faces of those present, each one a reflection of centuries-old battles and unyielding spirits. The child's bold proclamation hung in the air like an unspoken promise. "What if we embraced our shadows instead?" echoed in the minds of those gathered, igniting contemplations long buried beneath layers of denial. In that moment of profound deliberation, the elder stepped forward, drawing upon the collective spirit of the assembly. "Let us not shy away from what haunts us, for even the darkest night cradles the promise of dawn. We must face our fears, not as isolated souls, but united in our vulnerabilities." The shadow, sensing a shift, curled tighter around the chapel, its whispers morphing into a cacophony of doubt. "You seek to bind together your fears, yet know that they are the very chains that will drag you back into despair. Stop! Do not stir what sleeps in the silence. The veil of comfort is lifted when you expose the weaknesses that lurk in the recesses of your hearts." "Silence!" the child shouted, a brave spark flaring brightly in her chest. "You thrive on our fear. The stories we share are not just the chains you hold, they are our strength. We hold the weight of our memories, and together they weave a tale of resilience." The elder nodded, their hearts swift with understanding. "Indeed, our memories are not merely the echoes of pain, they are also the harbingers of hope. In acknowledging them, we can carve out a path to redemption." As the congregation absorbed the elder's words, they began to share their stories more fervently, each voice a note in a grand symphony of healing. They recounted moments of failure and heartache, drawing strength from communal empathy and understanding. A widow spoke of the empty chair at her table, yet revealed how she learned to fill the void with the laughter of children she chose to mentor. A young man shared how the scars of his past led him to serve others, thus turning his pain into a life-affirming purpose. The shadows shifted restlessly, but the light of their unity began to stifle its tendrils. "You believe in your stories, foolish mortals. But what of the past you cannot erase?" the shadow taunted, vibrating with anger. "What of the regrets that claw at your hearts in the dead of night? Will you truly welcome them as friends?" "And why not?" the child replied, her voice steady amidst the chaos. "If we invite them in, perhaps we can learn from them. What if it is in this very act of embracing our past that we uncover truths yet unknown?" In those moments of raw sharing, hope grew like wildflowers in a barren field. The light pulsed with the rise and fall of collective breaths, the congregation reflecting on the hidden dimensions of their souls. Would a reconciliation with their shadows, threaded with honesty and humility, open a gateway to their greater selves? Maybe in confronting the shadows, they could indeed emerge transformed, carrying renewed strength and resilience into the light ahead. As they stood, united, an aura of sacred energy enveloped them, inviting them deeper into the unknown. The elder lifted his hands, invoking a transcendent blessing. The chapel trembled softly as winds of warmth embraced them, an inexplicable grace settling like mist around their hearts. Yet, even amidst the rising tide of faith, questions loomed. If their shadows could transform into allies rather than foes, what revelations about their past were still yet to be unearthed? Could they dare to believe that embracing their full selves, both light and dark, could ultimately lead them to the very liberation they sought? Or was there an inherent danger in allowing their histories to mold their futures? The mystery remained, waiting patiently at the edges of their awakening. As the congregation continued in their circle of stories, a hush fell over the chapel, thick with a new awareness. A deep stillness enveloped them, amplifying every heartbeat, every breath. They had shed the weight of merely existing, stepping into a sacred moment of becoming. Shadows loomed outside the periphery of their collective vision, whispering sugar-coated untruths of despair and defeat, but within the hallowed walls, new understandings were forming. The elder, sensing the presence of the divine, closed his eyes for a moment, seeking both guidance and wisdom. Can we see our past not as a shroud of regret, but as a tapestry of lessons? Each thread interwoven with struggles and triumphs, revealing a picture far grander than our individual stories? The question hung in the air, inviting contemplation. One by one, the congregation began to share not just their burdens, but the beauty that had emerged from the ashes of their pain. A frail old woman spoke softly. In my moments of deepest sorrow when I lost my husband, I found strength in the garden we shared. Nature's resilience mirrored my own, and I learned that through nurturance and growth, life could still bloom. Her words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement, a chorus of acknowledgement. From the back, a young girl, radiant and full of hope, chimed in. I had a terrible fear of the dark, she said, her eyes glimmering with courage, but when my father taught me to look for the stars, I realized that even in darkness, there were points of light. It changed everything for me. The shadows writhed in response, their weight heavy against the unity burgeoning within the walls. You mistake your moments for clarity. Every story shared brings forth the specter of forgotten sins. How can light thrive where the truth lies buried in darkness? Look closely at your tales. They will reveal the bitter roots. But the child stood firm, undeterred. Am not afraid to face those roots. They belong to me, and they hold lessons I haven't yet learned. If my fears whisper of guilt and shame, perhaps their true voice tells of growth, urging me forward, she proclaimed. Their voices entwined, weaving a new narrative each time one stepped forward. A man recounted a time when anger had threatened to consume him, only for forgiveness to bloom when he heeded its call. I learned that holding on to resentment was like drinking poison expecting the other person to suffer. Forgiveness set me free, he shared, and the congregation held its breath in reverence. As they faced the shadows within, there was an energy shifting the very atmosphere. The elder raised his arms once more, and through his outstretched hands, a palpable connection formed. Beloved souls, let us shape our truth through this newfound unity. Let us speak a prayer all together. In unison, a solemn prayer resonated through the chapel, each resonant note binding them tighter. May our pasts, filled with shadow, serve to illuminate our path. We embrace the lessons learned and the love rediscovered. Deliver us, O Divine, from the clutches of fear and remind us that we are never alone in our struggles. As their voices swelled, a tremor ran through the ground beneath them, the air crackling with a myriad of unseen energies. The shadows recoiled momentarily, their whispers mingling with the melody of hope. Yet, questions loomed heavily. If confronting their own darkness could indeed unveil a greater light, would their attempts to reconcile with the past unleash deeper shadows? As eyes looked to the elder for guidance, uncertainty clung to the edges of their hearts. What truths lay dormant in their unaddressed fears? And were they truly prepared to venture into the depths of their souls where the deepest shadows thrived if it meant finding the light they sought? The answers remained shrouded in mystery, beckoning exploration yet to unfold. As the prayer lingered in the air, a profound stillness settled upon the congregation. It was as if time had melted away within the sanctuary, stretching the present moment beyond its usual confines. The elder, still with arms raised, felt a stirring in his spirit, a recognition that something beyond their collective understanding was unfolding in this sacred space. He opened his eyes and gazed deeply into the faces before him. A multitude of emotions reflected back at him: hope, fear, curiosity, and an undeniable yearning for revelation. In the silence of our hearts, he began, let us seek not only the light we desire, but also the shadows that cling to our souls. For to truly embrace the divine is to engage with both. The young girl, emboldened by the previous affirmation of her courage, spoke again, her voice like a quivering flame. But elder, if we embrace our shadows, will they not consume us? Aren't there things best left unacknowledged? Ah, dear child, the elder replied, his voice gentle yet firm, the very act of avoidance can often lead us astray. The scriptures tell us that he who covers his sins will not prosper, but whoever confesses and forsakes them will find mercy. It is not the shadows that harm us. It is our refusal to confront them. A deep murmur of agreement rippled through the congregation, stirring an unshakable curiosity within them. Were they prepared to venture further into their hidden corners? The shadows outside ebbed momentarily, as if intrigued by the courage kindling in the hearts of the faithful. A man in the back stood to speak, his hands trembling slightly. What if our shadows are not merely our sins, but the wounds inflicted by others? Are we not victims of their darkness? That question cut through the air like a knife, and an uneasy silence followed. The elder considered it carefully before responding. Indeed, each of us carries not only our own burdens, but those cast upon us. Yet remember, dear friends, even wounds can be transformed into pathways of understanding. Forgiveness may be the salve that heals. The tension in the chapel thickened in response to his words, each heart weighing the mingled truth of their own pain and the pain of others. Forgiveness doesn't mean that we forget, the elder continued, shifting the conversation, but it offers us a way to release the hold of the past, to move forward toward the light. Soft whispers of acceptance began to weave through the air, the congregation contemplating their tangled narratives, some rooted in guilt, and others in the scars of betrayal. They felt their intertwined stories both as a burden and a blessing, uniting them in shared humanity. Yet as they deliberated, an unraveling thought formed at the edges of their musing. Could this sincere acknowledgement of their shadows not only encourage healing but also provoke the true nature of evil dwelling within? What would happen when light was cast upon those darkened corners of their being, revealing hidden truths? As they navigated these layers of reflection and the possibility of deeper understanding, the ground beneath them vibrated once more, an unmistakable response from the universe to their gathering string of thoughts. The shadows, sensing their introspection, resumed their dance, whispering warnings of potential danger as they receded but never fully vanished. In a moment of collective vulnerability, the elder encouraged them once again. Let us be still together, and seek the divine presence in this uncertainty. What is it that we fear to confront? What enormities lie hidden in our shadows that might yet be transformed? The question hung heavy in the air, echoing throughout the chapel as they collectively faced the cave of their souls. Just as the flickering candles illuminated their surroundings, they slowly began to realize that this journey of unearthing their truths would demand courage beyond their current understanding. Would they be willing to illuminate the darkness that cohabited within, knowing not all shadows were merely remnants of their histories, but could perhaps lead them toward newfound faith and freedom? As the chapel grew silent, a palpable tension enveloped the air, thick with expectancy. The congregation held their breath, grappling with the elder's poignant question, as countless emotions coursed through their hearts. The flickering of candles cast ghostly silhouettes against the walls, where the shadows seemed to stir with renewed vigor, swirling restlessly, as if sensing the imminent turbulence within the souls gathered. One by one, the participants felt an awakening, each psyche stirred from the inertia of fear and complacency. The child who had sparked this transformation raised her hand once more, her small voice firm yet gentle. What if our shadows became the lanterns that guide us? What if they illuminated the wrongs we can right, the grief we can soothe, and the love we can embrace? Her words were like seeds, scattered into rich soil, kindling fires of contemplation in each heart present. The elder, invigorated by her courage, nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, dear child, shadows are not simply monsters lurking within. They embody our struggles, our pain, our journeys. They are part of the tapestry of life. Woven into us are threads of inadequacies, failures, and heartbreak, yet these too weave a story of resilience, evolution, and grace. With this invitation to reflect deeper, stories began to tumble forth, raw and beautiful. An elderly woman shared her battle against despair after losing her lifelong partner. She recounted how through her sorrow, she found solace in the comfort of others who had suffered similarly. their shared tears becoming a balm for her wound. This communal grief transformed into understanding and blossomed into a loving fellowship that nourished each spirit. Inspired by her vulnerability, another spoke of the struggles of raising children amidst uncertainty, facing societal expectations and their personal doubts, yet learning that embracing their hesitations fostered deeper connections with their children. Each fallen moment was a lesson of love, revealing the power of being present, even in chaos. He explained point one by one, the stories grew in power, a living testament to the interwoven human experience. The shadow, once bold and daunting, began to tremble, its mocking mirth silencing. It could not sustain its claim over the hearts that were now blooming with the strength of acknowledged truths. Murmurs arose among the congregation, contemplating how their burdens transformed into guiding lights. Forgiveness, one woman stated firmly, is not only for those we claim to forgive but for ourselves. Recognizing our imperfections allow us to grow. As the atmosphere vibrated with this newfound understanding, shadows shifted, retreating momentarily. But the darkness did not vanish. It lurked, watching for the slightest crack in their resolve. The spirit of doubt rippled forward, whispering remorseless accusations. You think this bull-headed optimism will guide you? You'll soon falter. Struggles will return, and you shall remember your shame. Yet, with each shadow's word, their unity solidified further. They reaffirmed their connection, clasping hands firmly, standing as a fortress against the encroaching dread. The child squeezed her eyes shut, and summoned forth one more proclamation. "Let us invite the waiting light," she explained, her voice rising with certainty. "For shadows cannot exist without light." In response to her call, the elder lifted the tattered Bible once more, a beacon glinting through the murkiness. "Saint Benedict, our shield and guide, may your wisdom embolden our hearts. Let our recognition of shadows transform us. We seek not merely to banish them, but to claim them as allies in our journey." As the congregation echoed his words, a collective spirit swelled, resonating through the walls of the chapel, merging their cries into one. The weight of insecurities and adversities transformed into a force that breathed life into their unity, igniting a powerful luminescence that chased away the darkness. Light glowed brighter, illuminating each shadow that had once held sway over them. The elder felt warmth cascading through the expanse of the chapel, penetrating every corner, every heart, dispelling the accursed grip of the figure that had loomed too long. Then emerged from the shadows visions of long-dead memories, illuminations reflecting moments of grace and beauty, the love that flourished in grief, the realization woven through fear of acceptance. "I see now," he spoke softly, turning to his congregation as revelation flooded through him. "To acknowledge our shadows is not to give them power, but to reclaim our stories, our true selves. Our fears transformed into beacons of courage allow us to extend hope to each other, to share the burdens that merely dimmed the flame of faith." The room felt alive with energy, electricity crackling as they shouted their prayers into the night, calling upon the divine to guide them through the shadows and into the brilliant light where transformation awaited. As they united their hearts, the dark figure shrieked, its form dissolving into a multitude of glimmering specks. "Witness your own light," the child cried, her eyes wide with joy. "Stand resolute, for shadows within are merely reflections of strength waiting to awaken." In the cooling storm that had once clawed at their sanctuary, warmth swept through every soul, wrapping them in a tender embrace of mutual understanding and faith. The shadows receded, not eliminated but acknowledging the burgeoning light within the hearts of the faithful. And as the final notes of their communal hymn faded into the ether, it became clear, in understanding the power of their stories, they found not only resilience but communion with the divine. Each shadow they faced only deepened their comprehension of love and acceptance, roots that would allow them to flourish forth in the world. In that moment, they had not only expelled the darkness, but lit a beacon that would endure beyond the chapel walls, a promise of hope and renewal that would resound throughout their community. They would carry shared truths into the world with a united heart, solidifying the revelation that shadows shine light on the path towards unyielding faith. And as they walked out into the storm now dissipating, illuminated by the relic light of hope, they realized the power that lay not just in expelling darkness, but in embracing the fullness of their humanity, a journey where shadows became companions illuminating the way to a deeper connection with themselves and divine grace.